it's Dr. Jen. Welcome back to the Integrative Health Podcast with Dr. Jen. Today we're talking to Dr. Shah. He has 15 years of medical experience and expertise with leadership in the healthcare delivery at city general hospitals to community settings to even the Mayo Clinic. He has brought his expertise and experience to the Swiss startup Aktiia to change the paradigm of how the world's most common disease, hypertension, is understood and managed. Also an angel investor and advisor, he's passionate about applying technology to solve practical problems in medicine and believes strongly in the power of positive thinking and collaboration. So I'm so excited to learn today about this company, and we're going to talk a little bit about blood pressure. So welcome, Dr. Shah.
Yeah, and thanks very much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your medical background and your experience in the hospitals, because that's probably is why you're so passionate about what you do now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a practicing cardiologist in the U.S. I've been in practice for over 12 to 14 years, I guess. And I trained in Mass General in Boston and then did my fellowship in St. Louis at Washington University. And then I went out and started my own practice in Portland, Oregon. And so I built my own practice from scratch over 7 years, which is tremendous fun and it was a great learning experience. And then for the last 3 years, I had the opportunity to be at Mayo Clinic in their Arizona campus. And so I went there and helped them start a complex thoracic aortic disease program. And so, I mean, I have a very sort of, in terms of medical practice, sort of general cardiology, specialized cardiology, but seeing largely the end results of years of chronic diseases, lifestyle, typical sort of Western lifestyles, diets, and other habits. And as I was thinking about kind of what to do next in my career, I kind of wanted to take all this knowledge that I gained in clinical medicine and the expertise around that, but then find something that allows me to broaden or expand that knowledge to many more people rather than sort of just one person at a time. And so while I still do practicing medicine, I love my patients, it is inherently somewhat limiting as a physician because it's one-on-one, which is great for that patient and for that physician, but it doesn't really allow for scale. And when we talk about hypertension, which is the world's most common disease, scale is absolutely central to the issue. And one of the major reasons that traditional medical systems have really not been able to manage or master treatment of hypertension. So just to give you some perspective around scale, 1.4 billion people in the world have hypertension. 130 million Americans have hypertension. It affects 1 in 2 adults over the age of 65. So you may not have it, although there's a high chance that all of us likely will develop it, at least half of us, but you're going to know somebody who does, or somebody who has some end effect from hypertension. So that's kind of really what I was looking for. And it just so happened that I found this startup that was working in this space. And so that's sort of my journey.
That's awesome. And for those listening, it's a lot of school. So first he did a residency in internal medicine, and then in cardiology, you have to do an additional fellowship. Was it 3 years in cardiology?
3 years more, yeah.
Yeah, and then you built a practice, which it's a lot of work to build up a cardiology practice.
Well, to build any practice, it's a tremendous amount of work and understanding. And so one of the things I always talk about for the clinicians in your audience, especially those who are running their own businesses or running their own practices, it is, let's take a tangent here, but it is a dramatically undersold skill set that many of us have or have gained over time, over the years. And all I would say is that having transitioned to a more entrepreneurial career or business, so to speak, career, is that don't underestimate your skills as a business person if you've done that in the real world, because there are so many translatable skills. It's just assumed and often sort of looked upon healthcare professionals by business folks that you don't have that requisite skill set. That's not true.
Yeah, well, it's not my favorite thing to own a business, but it's how I had to practice medicine for integrative medicine. And I will also say to those listening, I I think that being out in practice, and I'm in the same shoes as you, where it's like, okay, it's so important to be one-on-one with patients, but then you also want to do something that is going to help a lot of people. So that's where I kind of dove into doing a YouTube channel and a
Yeah.
podcast and
Yeah.
teaching on social media. But nothing can replace sitting one-on-one with a patient and hearing how they've healed, how much better they're doing, and all of that. So
But
it's
that's the truth about modern technology and really digital health in general. And sort of the promise of digital health has always been to amplify our expertise after having all those years of training and all this time of practice, is to take that expertise and that knowledge and to bring it to many thousands or millions of people with the click of a button or a push of an app or something like that. And that's really always been the promise of digital health. Not always done that way, but or thought of that way. But that's how I think about it. And it's really empowering a lot more people with knowledge. Because in the end, that's generally why people go to see physicians of any kind. It's not because they don't come to see me because they want a surgery or want some procedure, or, generally not. They're coming to me or you asking a question. Given your knowledge, help me figure out what to do next. And that's really what it is. And so that's how I look at sort of this field of digital health.
That's a great point. And usually the patient knows what's wrong with them. They're looking for guidance and a mentor to get better. So it's a great point. And it was funny in the car ride, I was talking back from Pittsburgh, I was talking to my kids today, and they're like, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, probably never. I want to keep giving valuable input to patients or mentor other doctors when I'm 90. That's my goal, because like you said, we've collected all this information, and more so the clinical experience is invaluable.
Yeah.
Actually, going through training. So let's talk about blood pressure, or high blood pressure, or hypertension. And how common was that in your practice and in the hospitals? You said
Well,
130 million Americans.
yeah. So the people who are generally seeing cardiologists, with some exceptions, but I would say the majority, if 1 in 2 Americans over the age of 65 have hypertension, then certainly the percentage of people who are coming to the cardiology clinic is going to be dramatically more than that. I don't know. I can't put a hard number on it, but it's got to be in the range of 80 to 90% have had hypertension. And oftentimes, almost always, people would come to see me after they had some event, after they had a heart attack, after they needed surgery, after they were hospitalized, and we took care of them and we settled out their, acute need. And almost always they would come back and they would say, well, thanks for everything you did, but why did I have this? Why did I have this event? Why did I need this surgery? Why did I, and that's a human nature sort of question. And again, almost always the answer would be, well, it's not generally just because of one thing, but it's because of a series of things that have gone on for usually decades, unnoticed, undernoticed, undertreated, not treated. And hypertension was usually at the top of that list as a primary contributing factor to most diseases and disorders that I see as a cardiologist.
And that's a scary thing. You don't know something's wrong unless you're looking for it, or it's a problem, or that it's as common as it is. And I know this probably happened to you a lot. You talk to a patient, have you been checking your blood pressure? And they're like, no, I just didn't want to know. I just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to know if it was bad, so I just didn't check it. And that's not the answer, because that can lead to consequences like stroke and heart disease.
That's almost always what happens. And again, it's just because one of the reasons is because of how cumbersome it has always been to take a blood pressure measurement. You have to put this cuff on to do a correct blood pressure measurement. Someone has to do the following series of steps. You have to be seated in a chair with your back flat against the back of the chair, your feet against the floor. You have to not talk for 5 minutes. You have to have no sound around you for 5 minutes. You couldn't have eaten for 30 minutes. You shouldn't drink for 30 minutes. No caffeine for a couple hours, no exercise for a couple hours. No, your kids shouldn't be around. Your arms should be free of clothing. You should have emptied your bowels and bladder. And then you can check your blood pressure. And guess what? That just doesn't happen. So many times and in my practice as well, even for the people who are at the highest risk of blood pressure related disorders, it's just really difficult for people to check their blood pressure on a consistent basis using traditional methods. And that's one of the areas that we can talk about that sort of Aktiia has really innovated in. But just to give some statistics around that, 51% of people who have hypertension never check their blood pressure. Only about 24% of people who have hypertension check it more than once a week. And the standard recommendation to check your blood pressure is to do it 4 times a day, twice in the morning and twice in the evening. So it's just really kind of just the way that traditional tools for blood pressure measurement have been designed don't have what we call product market fit, which means they don't have the form factor or the usability that enables them to be used in the way that they were intended to be used.
So there is new technology then, which I didn't know about this. So tell us a little bit about this new technology.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not super new. It's about 5 years old, huh?
Well, our founders of the company have been working on this for almost 20 years, and they've been working on it at a sort of biomedical engineering think tank called CSEM, which is in Switzerland. So they, in about 2004, started looking at using optical signals. So nowadays it's common, but think back to 2004. No iPhone, no watch, no smartwatches, no wearables. Like 2004, they started looking at optical signals on a light worn on your wrist to try to detect physiologic parameters. So they started with heart rate. And so for the first time, they were started to be able to detect heart rate using these optical signals. And now most of the devices that do that, which are commonplace, actually use and license a lot of work that they did. So after they did that, then they said, okay, well, we've kind of mastered heart rate. Now, what else can we look at? Now they started thinking about blood pressure. And that led them down about an 19-year journey, incredibly complex and difficult, to learn all the sort of techniques and technologies to develop what they needed to do to basically take optical signals and understand blood pressure from those signals. And that's what, and about 5 years ago, they commercialized their technology as Aktiia. And now we're in 7 markets across the EU and the UK, and we have about 50,000 active users. We aren't yet in the United States, and we are engaged with the FDA, but hopefully in the next year or 18 months or so, we'll have a pathway to come to the US. But they got to this place where the technology was feasible and accurate enough to be used commercially. And so what it is, it's a combination of a device, which is very simple and straightforward, looks like a bracelet. All this is has 2 LED lights in here, an optical sensor, and an accelerometer. And it takes, shines light into the skin, gets a reflection back from the capillaries, the small vessels under your skin, and builds out these waveforms, which are then sent to the cloud. That's where the algorithm works on it and delivers back heart rate and blood pressure passively and automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to stop your day. You can just sort of, all you have to do is wear it. And we get about 27, on average, 27 blood pressure readings per day, every day.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So could you take it off at night or when you shower or swim and then just put it on when you need the blood pressure readings, or? So
the idea is to wear it as much as you can. The newest generation of the devices are water resistant, so you can swim and shower with them. But the idea is to wear it as much as you can, because one of the sort of fallacies of current sort of looking at and understanding blood pressure is the concept that you have a stable blood pressure. I checked my blood pressure at 7 a.m. and it was 120/80. Okay, that's good. I'm good. The rest of the day, it's 120/80. Just assumption that it stays the same. That's not how it works. Blood pressure is continuously fluctuating up and down throughout days, weeks, months, and years. And really what you're interested in as a physician, as a clinician, and as a patient, what you really should be looking at is how much time over long periods of time does my body spend in an optimal range of blood pressure? That's what you care about. Because the longer in time your body is out of that optimal range, meaning too high above the optimal range, the more your organ systems are exposed to this higher blood pressure. So one point in time reading at 7:38 a.m. one time, once a day, means nothing. It really doesn't. What you really are interested in is this longitudinal assessment of how consistent is my blood pressure within an optimal range. And the only way you can understand that is by getting routine, consistent readings over days, weeks, months, and really years. And that's what this technology really enables.
It's really cool. It almost reminds me of a continuous glucose monitor, almost, but for your blood pressure.
There's a lot of parallels that they're not quite exactly the same, but there's a lot of parallels in concept. Yeah, there are a lot of parallels. Yeah.
You could see like the average and everything. And I'm sure when patients are on blood pressure medications that this is really helpful to see where they're at. Because like you said, their patients are only taking their blood pressure maybe one time a day, one time a week.
Yeah.
And they're really, it's probably, this technology would make it easier when they go into their doctor to evaluate medications.
Most of the time, as cardiologists I can attest to, we operate in an almost complete lack of data around blood pressure. So titrating medications, we may have a couple readings, maybe a year, and we're making decisions about how to change blood pressure medication. So it's really, it's almost an absence of data that most of us sort of operate in. And it's very common that physicians will make a decision on one office reading one time, because that's all you get. That's it. That's all the data you have. And so for physicians who are interested in a more proactive approach, a more longitudinal approach about how to keep their patients healthy and well, this solution in our suite of software that we build around the technology is really ideally suited. So not only isn't the patient able to see their own data, but equally their physician, when we set up the sort of professional platform software, their physician gets that data immediately and automatically. Nobody has to push anything. Nobody has to email. You don't have to fax. You don't have to call. It just goes automatically to both places. And so, it really enables that longitudinal, proactive type of engagement between physicians and their patients.
It's really awesome. So a little bit of a tease though, because not available in the United States yet.
Well, not available commercially in the U.S., but we are doing a number of research studies and trials under IRB. It's a low risk device, so we're doing a number of those, and we have lots of clinics that are interested in kind of doing this sort of more forward thinking approach to hypertension, blood pressure, and sort of prevention. So I would say it's definitely available, and all someone has to do, or if a clinic is interested, just contact us and we can roll you into one of our studies.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Do you think that insurance coverage will be good with this once it's FDA approved? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts initially is that it's unlikely. They don't payers cover very little to nothing in blood pressure. They don't cover blood pressure cuffs, one of the cheapest and most widely available things out there. They have very poor reimbursement for, a lot of other blood pressure technologies. So my guess is no. In Europe, it is similar in most countries. There are a couple of countries where payers are interested in deploying this to many of their customers or clients. But I would say in the US, having talked to chief medical officers of all major sort of healthcare payers, my guess is the answer is they're not really that interested in prevention or changing up the status quo. They're publicly traded, they're quarterly earnings based, like their decisions are made based on those things. So not anything else.
Right. But they cover all the blood pressure medications, the prevention thing, why insurances won't cover preventative things it makes me bananas, because this is something that I feel like should be widely available. But as I tell my patients, as I talk on social media a lot about this, is you have to pay for your health. Insurance is
Yeah.
not equal health. Insurance is just if you get in a bad accident, if you have a heart attack, you people have to
Mhm.
see it like that, unfortunately,
Right.
even though these deductibles are really large. So, I mean, this would be a great product for, like my parents, like my dad, who doesn't really keep an eye on his blood pressure. Is there a way that family members can not spy, but get permission by the
Yeah.
user to see their blood pressure readings? Like kids like
Well,
me, I totally stalk that.
so we do have some examples of that where it's not purposely designed that way for privacy reasons, but we do have examples from other people who have been using this for their parents or for loved ones, and they are the caretakers or caregivers, and it's just how they sign up for the account. The account is made for, let's say, your father, but you're the one that has the credentials. So the data comes, but you can log in, or you have shared credentials, and then you can both see it as long as you. So it's eminently possible, but the way it has to be designed from a privacy standpoint is that the user is the one that has control of their own information and data. But
Okay.
yeah.
Now, are there alarms? Do alarms go off? So say someone got into the 200s, like stroke scary levels, like do you automatically send an 911, call an ambulance, or same thing with going really hypotensive?
Yeah. So currently the answer is no, because as it happens with all regulated medical products, if you start doing that, then you have dramatically changed the risk level according to regulatory authorities. So it changes how your product is classified. The other thing to remember is that strokes that occur from hypertension generally occur after years, decades of high blood pressure. And it can happen that somebody's blood pressure is so high that it causes some stroke to occur, but generally that's not how strokes occur. And same thing with lower blood pressure. It's generally not something this isn't designed for some acute event where your blood pressure really drops very dangerously low because you have a bacteria in your blood or something like that. It's not designed for that. And so that's just, we've designed this for sort of long-term high, blood pressure monitoring over long periods of time. So that's how we've designed it so far. Although on the roadmap, we do want to put some basic level of alerting systems in there to say, like, well, your blood pressure is still high. It's been a week or two. You really, should think about speaking with your physician and engaging further. But as funny as it is, Jen, as logical as that sounds to you and me as a clinician, it dramatically changes the complexity on the regulatory side. Just that simple alerting.
Yeah, and I know what you mean, because when I work in the ER, that's patients, they have the really high blood pressure coming
Yeah.
in, with
Yeah.
stroke sometimes. But like you said, that had been going on for months. So if they
Right.
had this technology, they would know
You
that.
should have
And
seen it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's another thing to think about. These wearable devices are so important because you're looking at patterns and you're learning about yourself.
Right.
And then that makes you can actually make changes. And I'm sure that if someone is wearing this and they notice their blood pressure is high, they're probably going to start eating better and
Exactly. Yep.
exercising and,
Yep.
doing prayer, meditation, stuff like that, right? Is that what you're seeing
We've
over in the
we've
UK?
already seen that. No, we've already seen that when we look at
Cool.
people who are using this, who are hypertensive when they start using it. They are already taking action because they statistically significantly lower their blood pressure as compared to people who are normotensive. There is a clear signal there. And we didn't even have to do a randomized trial on that. We just saw that observationally. And that has to do with something called the Hawthorne effect, which is just that if you expose someone to their own data, all of a sudden they will have the information to make changes and to go and ask why, or to go and figure out what to do next. And that is among the most basic principles of how this can actually help people. It's just empowering people with their own data that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
Yes, I love that you said empowering because it's so true. And I see that in my office when patients will actually get their labs back or will get functional labs. And I'm like, look, you have candida overgrowth. We actually have to change your diet. And then they will. And just trusting doctors, and people give doctors a bad name sometimes, that they're like, oh, I have high blood pressure and they just told me to lose weight and eat better. And I'm sure they probably said more, but that's might have been all that the patient heard. But if they saw that data in front of them, their own data, then they would make an effort to change because it's more personalized, they're empowered. And I think that's really the hard thing with medicine, is this preventative look at things. Is, first of all, it's not covered by insurance, so we have to actually pay for it. But once they see the changes, it's going to be worth its weight in gold. I mean, using these
Right.
devices and different wearables. I mean, I wear an Oura ring, I wear a continuous glucose monitor from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see that banking my health. I'm only
Yeah.
going to make positive change out of it. And I think that this kind of technology, I see it the same way. It's so cool.
Yeah, I totally agree about the especially when you mentioned about like the how patients hear the generic advice around blood pressure. And
Yeah.
that's also something that we see as really empowering a physician as well, enabling a physician to make more personalized recommendations. One of the things that is always consistent, and I've always said it because it's the standard thing to say, when someone comes in and says, okay, what do I do with my high blood pressure? So we've established they have high blood pressure. Now you say, well, what do I do about it? And I hear myself doing this. I go through this laundry list of like, here's 7 things that if you go on it's all over. All of us know what to do when you have high blood pressure. You're supposed to lose weight, exercise more, decrease your salt intake, increase your sleep, reduce alcohol, stop smoking. And we have a tendency to regurgitate all of these things to all people. Here are 7 things that you need to do. And each one of them is extremely complex and difficult, much less here's 7 in a list in 20 minutes. Now go home, see you later, and good luck with all that. And so generally, exactly like you said, they'll say, well, I heard the same laundry list that I've heard 100 times before, and I'm just not going to do anything with that information because it doesn't mean anything to me. But what would be more impactful is to say, okay, you now have a tool whereby we can evaluate how your body responds to each one of those things. So why don't we start with the first one? Why don't we just start and say, let's lose 5 pounds and see what happens with your blood pressure. Do nothing else different. Just concentrate on losing 5 pounds. That's it. And then see the cause and effect. And I think that from a behavioral science standpoint, that I think has a much higher likelihood of actually creating an impact than here are the 7, sort of things, and no way to track how you're doing with them and come back next year. So I think it really is I think, especially in the clinics that are using it across the world and in the US, that's really what they're most excited about. They're most excited about giving someone a personalized insight or recommendation from their own data, which I think is really, really cool and really powerful.
Yeah, it is. Because like things like drinking alcohol, like when I wear my Oura ring and I see what it does to my deep sleep, I'm not just
Yeah,
going to have a drink casually anymore.
right.
It's just, it takes a lot. So I think that I definitely agree with that. Now let's talk about blood pressure a little bit and medications, if you don't mind. I have found, I have various patients, we try to get them off of their blood pressure meds occasionally, but I feel like anymore when they go to a cardiologist and they see, whatever providers there, they're just throwing these meds at them, and they're seeing what sticks. I just feel like it's the Wild West right now with treating blood pressure with medications. Just like within the last 5 years, I'm just like, what is going on with this? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a lot longer than 5 years, but I don't disagree. I mean, well, if you look at the standard of care, okay, standard of care, the ACC/AHA, American Society of American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, joint statements on how to manage high blood pressure, there are pathways, protocols for all people, same protocol, basically. There's only one difference between if you're 55 and older, if you're under 55, or you're Black or you're not Black. That's it. That's it. That's the two differences. So if you're in this protocol, you're going to get the same list of medications in the same order, and everyone's trained to do that, and we all know it, and it's the standard of care. And it's much easier to write a prescription than it is to talk about sleep or diet or exercise or salt intake. And like we just talked about, most of the time we know as physicians who've seen thousands of patients, like if you give them that laundry list, they're not really going to listen. So it's not going to have a great impact. So here's a pill. And then that works modestly, but here's a second pill. And that works some. And then here's a third pill. So most people end up on 2 or 3 or 4 medications to control their blood pressure. And that protocol is not very sophisticated, meaning we don't say, there's nothing to say that, okay, Jen, because of these factors, you're going to respond to this medication better than these 3. So instead of using the top one on the protocol, why don't we go with this one? Well, how do we know that? We have no predictive insights about who's going to respond to what medicine, nor is there really an effective way to track it. Even traditional blood pressure cuffs, like it's very difficult to get someone to measure their blood pressure routinely and consistently. So you understand, okay, they're responding to that one really well, and this one not so much. And so, but the way the pathway is set up, this protocol, it's set up so that you stay on the first medication, even if it's not doing a lot, and you just add a second. And even if that's not doing, you add the third. That's how the protocol is set up. And that's based somewhat in science, but it's also based on this sort of historical way we look at, think about, measure, monitor, and manage blood pressure. So yeah, it's pretty antiquated. I mean, the blood pressure cuff itself, which we're still using today, is over 100-year-old technology. This is antiquated, you know, and so that's one of the things about sort of pushing forward with some innovation. If you have personalized data sets, you know, one of the things we're already starting to study with some research partners in Europe is how do people respond to certain medications? What does that look like in our data set? And then the next question will be, of course, well, can we start to predict based on someone's blood pressure pattern? Can we start to predict that this medicine was going to work better than this medicine, which is going to work better than this one? Or this person, we can talk about salt till we're blue in the face with that person, but it's never going to do anything for them. So stop talking about it. And they should be focused on alcohol. Or this person's, they should be focused on weight because that's their pattern. So really understanding those details that are hidden in these patterns, which we've never seen before. No one's ever had these sort of complex patterns. That's really, I think, the future of where we can go with this.
This is so exciting. But, well, first of all, with meds, there's side effects. We didn't even talk about the side effects.
Sure.
And that's
Yeah.
crappy too, because each one has its own side effect. But what's really cool about what you were saying about, you know, tracking this blood pressure and collecting the data, I want people to realize how important this is, because like you were saying, the patterns we could, and you could also look at, you know, male or female, what their race is, their age, all of that. This is so big, because hopefully then doctors will not just follow this stupid algorithm, which is unindividualized, you know, because we're all differently genetic wise, we're all different, and actually do the right thing. But the problem is this kind of technology and technology in general, it lags what, like 20 years before it's probably going to get passed through like the cardiologists to go into their protocol. I mean, that's the only problem. So your only hope is that you can like search out doctors that are using this technology and actually like using their gestalt, their experience, and this new data to actually treat you individually. That's what I see.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 main hurdles to adoption. Well, there's lots, but it's 2 biggest ones. One is regulatory approval that you just have to get through. There's no way around that one. You just have to get through regulatory approval to be able to be used at all in a clinical way. Other than, as I said, we have a number of sites that are doing studies with us. But the second point is willingness to adopt from traditional medicine, like you said, cardiologists, primary care doctors. I mean, who's going to adopt this, even though it might have regulatory approval until it gets into the guidelines? And the answer is, yeah, I think you're right. I think traditional healthcare, like in everything, is very, very slow to adopt. That's not a surprise. Even to this day, there's lots of data showing that it takes about 17 years to go from innovation to adoption. And even if it makes it into a guideline, physicians follow maybe 50% of what is written in the guidelines. So it's no guarantee, even if it is written in a guideline, that it's actually going to be followed. So I think, as a physician, but also as an entrepreneur and a company that's trying to be innovative, we also have to be innovative how we think about how to gain adoption in healthcare. And as in most things, you're going to get early adopters and people who are willing and understand that the traditional way of doing things is really not, meeting us where we need it to. So go find them, go build a coalition of the willing, go understand who's willing to adopt this once it has regulatory approval, who's willing, who sees the value in prevention. It's not going to be, the payers aren't going to be first, traditional healthcare, academics, not going to be first. So, that's something that I think is always it's a challenge, but it's important it's important to accept that, I think. And I think that investors and others who are always thinking about innovation in healthcare say, well, when are payers going to adopt? When is traditional healthcare going to adopt? They're going to be the last adopters. They always are,
True.
So accept it, unless if it involves inpatient, in hospital, major procedures and surgeries, then they'll be the first, because that's how they make money. No way to say it. Then that's how it goes. But if it's something else, something that's not quite aligned to that, it's going to take a long time.
Right. Yeah, and that can be super frustrating. So that's why, as I always tell my patients or anyone listening, to be your own advocate. Be your own advocate and take charge of your health, because yeah, you definitely can't rely on the health insurance companies
No.
or the hospitals. So you definitely, you have to advocate, and I've had some beautiful stories of patients doing that and having good outcomes advocating for themselves at hospitals. So
it's going to be, I think that's a having the ability nowadays to have the data in your own hands and to educate yourself. I think people are in different parts of different generations are starting to realize how crucial that is to their own healthcare. And like you said, I'm a cardiologist for over a decade. I get this more than anyone. You can't really just rely on the system, so to speak, to just manage your healthcare for you. That's not how they're built. That's simply not. And in fact, many of the physicians within those systems who are trying to do the right thing, who are trying to act there is significant tension for those physicians within that system. And so, in the end of the day, whose health is, who is it most important to for you to be healthy? It's it's me. I'm in charge of my health. So that really accepting that and understanding that, I think, is crucial. And even though we pay so much in this country for health insurance, that's no guarantee of health. It's just an insurance policy.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So what exactly do you do as chief medical officer at the company?
Well, it's has ranged a number of things now, but I am the primary voice of medicine and healthcare into the company. And so in almost every function, so for example, commercialization and sales, for product development design, for strategy of the company, for regulatory strategy, and R&D. Sort of in all those functions, I give the voice of the physician and patient side of things, is just to say, here's how currently it happens in healthcare. Here's what we want to design to really make a difference, or try to make a difference.
That's awesome. That's really fun. And does Aktiia, do they have anything else they're working on? Because I know you said they kind of developed this technology for the last couple decades. What do they have in store in the future?
That's just the underlying technology that supports this. This has been in the market only 3 years. So, I mean, it's really just there was an incredible amount of research had to go into trying to get to a working commercial prototype. There's a number of major innovations that we have in the pipeline. I can't talk too much about them other than to say that, right now we have our own device that's doing this. And there is a calibration step that still needs to take place with a traditional cuff once a month. And in the future, near future, that should go away. So to be completely calibration free. And then the next most logical step is that nothing in here in this bracelet is proprietary. So the next step would be to deliver this technology as a software riding on top of third-party hardware. So people who are wearing other devices or using smartphones to be able to start to capture the same type of data using other devices. I think that's a little bit further, but the first step would be to be completely separate from the traditional cuff.
That'd be cool. Any way that you could have this technology like in the hospitals? Because I like in the ER, oh my goodness. I don't know. Have you ever been in the ER where they're like, get a manual BP?
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't seem right. We got to get a manual. Like so much drama to get a manual BP.
That would be
just so cool. Like put the device on them.
Yeah. We've been asked a number of times. It is theoretically possible. We've tested it in hospital situations, but that's not our primary value is not in the hospital.
Right.
It's more for at home use, ambulatory use. Because in the hospital, you have 10 things to take a blood pressure. You put an art line in, you can put a cuff on, you can just press the button and it goes off every 30 seconds. Like there's no realistic reason that you need some novel technology in the hospital. But there are some applications like for
be nice though. I know
skilled nursing facilities
Right. All my nurse and doctor friends are thinking that would be so nice because the blood pressure cup slides down. Sometimes people's arms are too big, they're too small.
All those things.
Anyway. But you said nursing homes. That would be amazing. I love that idea.
So skilled nursing homes or at-home use when people are doing this hospital at home kind of thing. So we've investigated those. We haven't yet done anything there,
That's so much fun. So what's next for you and how can people find you, find the company?
Yeah. So like I said, especially for our US-based audience, it's thinking at if your clinic is really sort of, wants to be on the forefront of this, in this science, then looking at doing an IRB study with us or getting enrolled as one of our partners and PIs. And we're rolling it across several sites already across the country. And we're going to keep expanding, help collect a lot of data and help support future evidence for all kinds of things. So you can get a hold of us, me directly on LinkedIn anytime. The website is www.aktiia.com. And then on all social media handles, it's at Aktiia Global.
Okay, awesome. And if people are listening out there and they don't have a clinic, but they maybe would want to be involved in a trial, how could they find that? Just reach out?
Just reach out to us directly. Reach out to me directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because that would be really cool because that's the only way you could really get your hands on one in the US right now.
In the US, yeah. For the near future.
This is so much fun to learn about this new technology and what your company that you're involved with and CMO of is doing, because this is really going to change healthcare and help prevent adverse outcomes from hypertension.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, Dr. J.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jen. Great to be here.